Hi guys, I'm Maylin Dovan, certified athletic therapist and founder of Rehab-U Movement and Performance Therapy. Welcome to our YouTube channel. This week we're going to talk about adductors and how powerful adductors are important for sports, specifically for rotational sports. So we talk about the hip joint a lot. You can see on the channel there's another video on hip mobility. So hip mobility is an issue that we talk a lot about. Of course, the hip is an important joint. It's the central pivot for the body, specifically in rotational sports. So when we talk about complex, dynamic rotational movements, like throwing, like striking, like changing directions, the adductors, the hip is implicated, but the adductors are very important and they act bilaterally to control the pelvis moving on the femur and the femur moving on the pelvis, right? So the adductor group has a biomechanical demand in a lot of hip positions and in multi-directional positions. Hey guys, thanks for watching our videos and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. So the adductors are a group that tend to get injured a lot, right? And one of the many common gaps that we see returning from adductor injury is it's not enough to do hip adduction with a band tied around your ankle. That doesn't really represent what the adductors need to do and how powerful the adductors need to be in rotational sports for things, like I said, things like throwing, striking, and changing direction. So that being said, of course, before working on power for the adductors, they need to have some fundamental strength. So power work needs to be preceded by strength. So if you're rehabbing someone coming back from an adductor injury, or if you've got an athlete who you find doesn't have enough power through the adductors or is weak through the adductors, I want to show you some essential exercises to include in their training. Okay, so let's get to it. All right, so first order of business is let's isolate those adductors and work on really getting strength back in those adductors. So one popular exercise that we can use to strengthen the adductors is the Copenhagen plank, which you can really progress, right? So let's start with Carl, who is a pro baseball player, pitching coach for Academy Baseball Canada, and he's going to show us go through these exercises. He's going to be our model. So we're going to get him set up in a short lever Copenhagen plank. So here I want his knee actually on the bench. So he's got a shorter lever. So this would be, a regression. So the easiest version of a Copenhagen plank, isometric hold, shorter lever. Okay. You can then progress this to a long lever Copenhagen plank, still in an isometric hold, but we've just lengthened the lever. So here what's important is for him to really dorsiflex the ankle, activate all that musculature to protect the medial aspect of his knee, okay? And that would be a progression. From there, he could progress to lifts, where he's dropping the hip and then lifting up the hip. So progressing, including an eccentric concentric contraction, right? Now, once he gets better at this, what we want to have is some power. So you can even progress this to do a quick lift. So a quick concentric lift, so a snap concentric contraction, which is going to start to mimic the demands of changing directions a little bit more, but still using the Copenhagen plank. So the second exercise I want to talk about is lateral lunges. Obviously, lateral lunges are great for the adductors. So here, Carl is doing a side-to-side lunge. So we really get the adductors working on both sides, lengthening under tension on one side is obviously going to be interesting. So we can work those adductors in a very lengthened position, okay? Now another way that you can progress this exercise is to use a glider lateral lunge, where because he's got one foot on the glider, when he comes out of that position, he's actually gonna have to pull with that foot as well as push with the support leg, right? So he's really having to pull with that adductor in a lengthened position, okay? So again, a little bit more demanding on the adductors, a little bit more dynamic, mimicking a little bit more and having a pull on the adductors dynamic pull on the adductors. Then of course, incorporating actual loaded rotational movements is going to be interesting, right? So I'm gonna put Carl under load. I'm going to get him to do a rotation. It's going to look like a rotation. It's going to look like a changing direction, and really work on that power aspect of the adductors. So as he gets into position and then has to accelerate that mace into rotation, he's really working, the adductors are working bilaterally, right? Moving the pelvis on the femur on one side and femur on the pelvis on the other side. So really great exercise to tap into the power movement of the adductors, and you can load it, which is nice, of course, as well. So there you have it, guys. Why is this so important? I repeat it, the adductors need power, right? And before having that power, you need to have that strength. But that aspect of power is not going to be implemented by using just banded hip adduction exercises. Those can be okay in an early rehab process, but I've seen it all the time. Athletes get out of pain, they've done those kind of exercises, but that doesn't nearly prepare them for the stress of the adductors during sport, and it doesn't nearly build the power that the adductors need that transfers into sport, that transfers into throwing, striking, changing direction. Okay, so hopefully you guys have an idea of what it is to have a strategy to say, I need to build my adductor strength and power so that it can transfer to my sport. And on that note, we'll see you next week.